Maybe you've gotten a sponsor for your podcast, but you don't know exactly the process it takes to actually collect money from your sponsor. I got some tips coming up for you next. Hey there, podcaster. My name is the Shan Man, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer. And today's video is powered by Agora Pulse. We're talking today about monetization. I've got a couple different videos that are on monetization that I'll leave in the description down below if you're interested in that. However, today we're talking about a specific question that was asked in a Facebook group that I came across this last week. Now, there are a lot of marketers out there who have podcasts, and they've been all talking about how they monetize their podcasts with sponsorships. And let me tell you this right now, there's no perfect way to get a sponsor for your podcast. You really have to kind of have that knack for selling and selling time on your podcast if you want to get a sponsor for your podcast. So there's a lot of gray areas that digital marketers and just marketers in general are saying this is how you sell space and time on podcasting. And so someone had asked a question in a Facebook group that asked, and I'll go ahead and read it right here from my screen. It says, with sponsorships, when do you have advertisers pay / what period are you using to download stats or for download stats? Is it 4 weeks or 6 weeks after release or another amount of time? Lots of info about how to pitch sponsors, but haven't seen anything about when money actually exchanges hands or changes hands. That's a really interesting question. And I felt that it was important that podcasters should know what, I guess, kind of happens in radio. It's going to vary from radio station to radio station, but I want to share with you, I guess, kind of how it works here at my radio station, and I'm sure it works pretty much anywhere where there's a sales department. And what you're going to hear whenever it comes down to how people get their money is really all based around billing. It's all based around certain packages that you build out for your client, and then it's based around billing the sponsor. You're not always getting money up front, but it's always best if you can get money up front. So that's what I recommend to the podcaster when it comes down to building out packages and then getting the money. You want to get the money first before you commit to the promise. Now, don't get me wrong, as a podcaster, you have to fulfill on your promise of actually creating some type of ad, whatever you may agree on within the package that you've developed for your potential sponsor. So this is what I had written to that individual on that Facebook post. I said, I would recommend money changes hands before you even record audio. This way, you're responsible for placing the sponsorship in your own show. This is how it's done at my radio station. Money changes hands either up front or in a bulk payment, or is done in payments. With payments, you'll want to increase the price to push them into paying up front instead. But payments are always an easy way for the sponsor for obvious reasons. The only downside to payments is that someone can screw you out of money and not pay what they promised. Then you have to chase down money. Once that individual saw my response, he went ahead and responded on the same thread, and he said, I think I was getting caught up on the number of downloads, and perhaps it's more helpful to think of it as a minimum, and anything above the minimum is just a bonus for the sponsor. For example, I pitched that they will receive a minimum number of downloads within X period, let's say 4 weeks from release, and it'll cost Y. They pay me Y, and then if the downloads exceed the quote, it's a bonus for them. That's certainly one way to do it, but I did create another response to that particular post, and I don't think that that's a way to look at it in terms of bonus. There are things in radio that we like to call value add or added value to particular packages that we develop for sponsors, and it might be something that is useful for you within your podcasting program. So if I can go ahead and jump back into the response that I had written back to him, and by the way, you can find this response on my blog at theshanman.com. I'll leave a link down in the description down below, but this is what I had written to that individual. I said, number one, when you extrapolate numbers, you can share the potential reach for your sponsor that they will get an X amount of weeks for a certain amount of reach that they would get. So the exposure to the potential listeners. Okay, you place the price on the amount of weeks you set for your sponsor. In radio, we call this a flight of weeks. So in other words, you would have, say, 4 weeks, and for those 4 weeks, you would run a flight of ads that would cost a certain amount of money in order to in order to get that brand's message out there. Number 2, flights can be based around episodes that might be popular or could be based around times of year. It's just going to be up to you to test all of this out. Within your flights, share the potential reach that they'll get with the statistics that you currently have. Now, I don't recommend that you start pitching to any potential sponsors when you only have, say, 400 downloads a week. I would say you could start with 1,000 downloads a week, but I wouldn't say anything lower than anything lower than 1,000 is going to make it or break it for you. Of course, if you do have that amount of download numbers, you could make your spots or whatever sponsorship that you're creating for your podcast probably on the cheaper end. But once you start getting into thousands, in fact, I do know that some sponsors are looking for 10,000 downloads a week. So that's where the real money comes in. But it doesn't mean that you still can't create a branding campaign for your sponsor. So when we go back into this response, I say every quarter you can make a new package with different types of flights with different types of promotions within the flight. You can build the following into your flight package. Number 1, a website banner ad that appears at the show notes for particular episodes in conjunction to the sponsorship ad that's running inside of the podcast. Number 2, as your stats grow, because your stats will grow if you're constantly promoting your podcast. As your stats grow, you can increase the pricing and promotional structure of added value you can place in for a flight. You got to get creative with this if you want to acquire a sponsorship. And then, of course, number 3, if your sponsor wants to see some type of return on investment or ROI based on what they are paying to be on your podcast, then I would require that they set up their own landing page. They might have to set up their own text messaging service so they can track what their ad is doing inside of your own podcast. I'm going to tell you this right now, that with podcasting, there is no real concrete way of tracking what ads are being mentioned on the podcast other than using coupon codes or maybe using website links. Those are the only ways that I know that you can track. And even at that, there was an article that was based around this entire topic about how do you track the return on investment based on advertising inside of podcasts. That article was actually found on the MarTech website. I'm going to go ahead and read some of that for you. Here it says, the medium of podcasting is somewhere between the definition of AM and FM radio and digital media. An advertiser can run the same spot they have created the AM/FM radio created for AM/FM radio, but they have no traditional reach, frequency, or gross ratings points, or GRP, estimates in podcasting. So in radio, we base things around ratings points. Podcasting doesn't have ratings, any types of ratings. They really use their download numbers as a means to leverage I guess a way to tell their other sponsor and leverage the numbers to say, hey, this is how many downloads we get per week. So when you're building out packages, you have to remember that you're not getting a whole lot of demographics. I mean, you're getting some demographics, but what I would recommend that you do is you get download numbers and statistics from your service like Libsyn, Blueberry, or wherever you're getting your statistics from, and I would combine them with your Google Analytics and show how many people are reaching not only your podcast, but also your website, so that maybe you can build that into your package. I think one thing you need to remember is that with podcasting and advertising and sponsorships are really more of a brand play than anything else. That's what I have really kind of noticed in the radio industry, is that anything that is a spot or a commercial or an endorsement or anything like that, it's really more about branding, more about getting the word out there. Now, if there is some type of return on investment that the advertiser is looking for, they have to create their own text messaging code or service, or maybe they have to create their own website landing page, and that's where the talent, or maybe the spot that's being read on the air, maybe that is directing people to that particular landing page or that particular text code number. And that's where you're seeing a return on investment. As far as what kind of performance those types of, I guess, calls to actions will do, I can't be for sure. I've seen them all over the board, so I really can't be sure and give you a direct answer on that, because it's always kind of been like that. So brand plays are really going to be a little bit more affordable for your sponsor when you come down to creating packages. But if they're looking for an ROI, they're looking for something that is a little more, they want to look for some type of data, and really that's what what they're looking for, is the data. You might have to create some type of ROI package or strategy for them, and that might cost a little more money, because at that point then you move from not only just podcaster, but maybe you're turning into a brand strategist or some type of marketing strategist, and that might cost a little more because it is taking you the time to figure out with the client what they can do to get more ROI based off of the ad that is on your particular podcast. So as you go in and you create packages for potential sponsors, don't think that you have to get Blue Apron, and don't think that you have to get Squarespace. Those aren't the only two sponsors that you can go out and get. You can definitely get local sponsors to get onto your podcast. And of course, right now, because it is so affordable to get on a podcast, if you decide to put a monetization model inside of your podcast, I would recommend that you create packages that are affordable for that sponsor and what will work for them and you. You have to get creative with this. You can go to local lawyers, you can go to local plumbing services, you can go to craft shops, you can go to stereo stores, but make sure that the sponsor matches your brand and your podcast, because you're not going to get something that is like off-brand for your podcast. Now, there is a really interesting study that talks all about what podcasters are consuming, and podcasters, I guess, spend more time in grocery stores for whatever reason. I'm going to leave a link to that article down below. In fact, it's on that MarTech website that you might be able to that you'll be able to read and find very interesting. I recommend that you do read it, but that's where you start getting into this creative space of creating sponsorships for your podcast. It's really going to help you out. These are as of 2018. It could change tomorrow. As of right now, there's no real tracking within podcasting because it's still kind of like, I guess it's a passive active listening experience. I say passive active because people are engaged, but they're still doing things around in their day in order to complete their task and consume your content. Okay, so just kind of remember that. All right. If you like this video, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up, and of course, hit subscribe. And when you hit subscribe, hit the little bell button, because that will notify you when I upload a video that is like this, and of course I'll give you some more podcasting news. And of course, if you're starting a podcast for the very first time and you just don't know where to start, I have an essential quick start guide that you can go ahead and download. It's in the description below, or you can click it right up here on the right hand side of your screen with the little flyout, and it should be able to help you out. So you tell me, have you started monetizing for your podcast? Leave a comment down below and let me know if you're started monetizing or you will plan on monetizing. That would really give me some insight as well as to what I should be looking for when it comes to creating future videos. In the meantime, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to hit one of the videos on the left-hand side, or your right-hand side, sorry. It's got some information for you. Maybe I'll put one of my videos about monetization over there so that you can check that out too. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.